There were no aphids in my grandmother's garden. Not a single season in 40 years. I used to think she was just lucky. That's what I told myself for years. But last spring, when my tomatoes were so covered in those sticky little green bugs that I couldn't even see the stems underneath, I finally sat down and opened the box of old papers she left behind. Notebooks, clippings, letters from neighbors. And tucked between a pressed rose and a seed packet from 1947, a folded, handwritten page with 3 words at the top. For the aphids. I tried it. Within 36 hours, the infestation was gone. That recipe is what I'm going to share with you today. And once you know it, you'll never spend money on pesticide sprays again. If you've ever walked out into your garden in the morning and found the underside of your rose leaves black with tiny insects, you know that hollow feeling in your stomach. You look closer and they're everywhere. On the new growth, on the buds, on the stems. And if you touch a leaf, your fingers come away sticky because those little creatures have already been busy all night. Aphids, greenfly, blackfly, plant lice, whatever you want to call them, they work fast. A single aphid can produce 80 offspring in 1 week. By the time you notice the damage, the curling leaves, the stunted growth, the yellowing tips, there are already thousands of them. Most people go straight to the garden center. They come back with a bottle of something that smells like a chemical factory, spray everything, and feel like they've done their job. But here's what those bottles don't tell you. The same chemicals that kill the aphids also kill the beneficial insects, the ladybirds, the lacewings, the hoverflies that would have dealt with the problem naturally. And the aphids? They come back the following week, resistant, stronger, in greater numbers. I know this feeling because I did exactly that. 3 summers in a row, spray, repeat, spray, repeat. And every August, my plants looked worse than they did in June. Does this sound familiar? The remedy I found in my grandmother's papers wasn't something she invented. She had a note at the bottom of that page, told to me by old Mrs. Hartley, who learned it from her mother, who used it on the farm in Lincolnshire before the First World War. So this is at least 4 generations old. But here's what made me take it seriously. I later found almost exactly the same formula in a 1931 horticultural handbook I picked up from a second-hand bookshop. It was published by the Royal Horticultural Society, not some obscure pamphlet, but a proper reference book used by professional gardeners. The chapter was called Control of Soft-Bodied Insects Without Petroleum Distillates, a very official title for a very simple idea. Then I found it again in a 1943 Ministry of Food leaflet about wartime victory gardens, the ones the British government distributed to encourage people to grow their own food during rationing. The instructions were almost word for word what my grandmother had written. This wasn't folk superstition. This was tested, documented practice, used by professional horticulturalists and wartime gardeners alike. It worked before chemical pesticides existed. And then, somewhere in the 1950s, when the big agrochemical companies started selling their products, this kind of knowledge quietly disappeared from gardening books. I'm not here to tell you there's a conspiracy. I'm just here to tell you what I found in an old box of papers and what happened when I tried it. Before I walk you through the remedy itself, I want you to understand why it works, because once you understand the logic, you'll know how to adapt it, when to use it, and why you don't need to buy anything expensive. Aphids are soft-bodied insects. Unlike beetles or wasps, they have no hard shell. Their skin, if you can call it that, is permeable. They breathe through tiny openings called spiracles along the sides of their body, and they feed by piercing plant tissue with a needle-like mouthpart and sucking out the sap. All 3 of these facts matter for what comes next. Step 1. The base solution. What you need: 1 liter of warm water, 2 teaspoons of pure liquid Castile soap, unscented, no additives, this is important, and a clean spray bottle. The original recipe used shaved soap from a bar, which was the standard in 1930s households. Castile soap, made from olive oil, is the closest modern equivalent. You can find it in most health food shops and online. It costs almost nothing. How to make it. Add the soap to the warm water and stir gently until dissolved. Do not shake. You don't want a foam. You want a clear, slightly slippery solution. Pour into the spray bottle. Why it works. The soap breaks down the waxy, permeable outer layer of the aphid's body. It also blocks the spiracles, those breathing holes. The aphid essentially suffocates. This happens within minutes of contact. This alone will kill the aphids you spray directly, but it won't prevent new colonies from establishing. For that, we need the second step. Step 2. The repellent layer. What you need. 6 large garlic cloves and half a medium white onion. How to prepare. Roughly chop the garlic and onion. No need to be precise. Place them in a small saucepan with 500 milliliters of water. Bring to a gentle simmer for 10 minutes. Do not boil hard. A gentle simmer is enough. Remove from heat and leave to cool completely. This takes about an hour. Once cooled, strain through a fine cloth or a kitchen sieve until you have a clear liquid. Discard the solids. Add this liquid to your spray bottle with the soap solution. Why it works. Garlic and onion contain sulfur compounds, allicin in garlic, thiosulfonates in onion, that are powerful insect repellents. Aphids locate host plants primarily through scent. When you coat the plant's surface with these compounds, the plant becomes, from an aphid's perspective, invisible. Scouts can't identify it. Colonies won't establish. The 1931 handbook described this exact mechanism. The volatile oils of allium species create an olfactory barrier to soft-bodied insects while leaving no harmful residue on the plant or fruit. This is not magic. This is chemistry that has been understood for a very long time. Step 3. The secret layer, the one most people skip. Here's what my grandmother added that I didn't find in the official handbook. This was her personal addition, the thing passed from Mrs. Hartley on the farm in Lincolnshire. What you need. 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, raw, unfiltered, the kind with the cloudy sediment at the bottom. Add it to your spray bottle. Why it works. The acetic acid in apple cider vinegar lowers the pH on the plant's surface. Aphids, and many other soft-bodied insects, are sensitive to acidic environments. But more importantly, ants. This is the part no one talks about. Ants and aphids have a symbiotic relationship. Ants farm aphids. They carry them to new plants. They protect them from predators. If you kill the aphids but leave the ants undisturbed, within 48 hours the ants will have brought a fresh colony from somewhere else in your garden. The vinegar disrupts the ants' scent trails. They use pheromone paths to navigate, paths that become confused and broken when the surface pH changes. Ants won't protect what they can't find. My grandmother's note. Don't forget the vinegar, or the ants will undo your work before morning. Step 4. Application. When to apply? Early morning or late evening. Never in direct midday sun. The combination of soap and sun can scorch plant leaves, and the heat causes the essential volatile oils to evaporate before they can do their work. How to apply? Shake the bottle gently before each use. Spray the entire plant, not just the tops of the leaves, but the undersides especially. Aphids congregate on the underside of leaves and in the soft growing tips. Pay particular attention to new growth, bud clusters, and the base of stems. How much? Coat the leaves until just before runoff. You want a film on the surface, not a drench. How often? Apply once. Check after 24 hours. If the infestation was severe, apply again on day 3. For prevention during growing season, a light spray once every 10 days is enough. 1 liter of solution is enough for a dozen rose bushes or a bed of 20 tomato plants. What to expect? Within 6 to 12 hours, you will see the aphids dying in place. They go still and drop from the leaves. Do not wash the plant after application. The residue continues working as a repellent for 5 to 7 days, depending on rainfall. I want to tell you what happened in my garden last May. I had 3 raised beds of broad beans that were absolutely overwhelmed. The growing tips were completely black with blackfly, which is a type of aphid. I had already lost 1 bed to them the previous year. I made this solution on a Sunday evening, spent about 20 minutes mixing and straining, and sprayed all 3 beds before dark. Monday morning I went out, and the blackfly were still there but visibly sluggish. By Tuesday morning, the leaves were clean. Not mostly clean, completely clean. I watched for the ants. There were a few scouts on Monday looking confused, changing direction, not finding what they were looking for. By Wednesday, I didn't see a single ant on those beds. I harvested from all 3 beds in July, the best broad bean harvest I've ever had from that garden. My neighbor Margaret, she's been growing vegetables for 40 years and is considerably more experienced than I am, looked at those plants in June and asked what I'd done. I showed her the recipe. She tried it on her roses, which had been struggling with greenfly every summer since she planted them. She texted me 9 days later, "Whatever's in that bottle, I'm never buying spray again." One more thing before I leave you with this. The 1943 Victory Garden leaflet I mentioned, the wartime one, had a note in the margin that I think about often. Someone had written in pencil in a very neat hand, "This costs almost nothing, works every time, don't forget it." I don't know who wrote that, probably someone who was rationing money along with food, who needed to protect every plant they grew because it was going directly onto the family table. Someone for whom a failed crop wasn't a disappointment, it was a real problem. That kind of knowledge was earned. It wasn't written down for publication or profit. It was written down because it worked, and someone wanted to make sure it wasn't forgotten. It almost was. I'm curious, have any of you dealt with aphids or blackfly in your garden? What did you try? Did it work? Let me know in the comments. I read every one of them, and some of the best remedies I've found have come from people leaving a note about what their own grandparents used to do. And if you have a garden problem you want me to look into, something you've been struggling with and can't find a proper answer for, leave it in the comments. I can't promise I'll find a 100-year-old solution to everything, but I'll try.